The MoneroTopia guest segment is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys.
All right, we are working on updating that video with the new Cake logo, but it's kind of vintage. It's cool. We will be updating it. MrWonderland, how's it going, man?
Hello.
What's going on? I saw you chiming in the chat. I thought it'd be cool to get you up here. We didn't have a special guest lined up for this week, so you always have a good perspective on things. I know you keep a close eye on everything. So yeah, would love to get your take on what we've seen with Cubic and what some of the proposals are that are being thrown around, and what your thoughts are on all this.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I mean, I try to stay up to date with all the XMR or Monero stuff. I mean, since I'm part of the German Monero podcast now, I have.
Oh yeah, you're running a
reason to stay
podcast
in touch.
now. Okay.
Yeah, I revived the podcast with Alex Anarco. Like he did it for like a few years, then he kind of like didn't do a lot of episodes for a while, and then I brought him back basically, and now we are doing regularly episodes. So yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. But
so what do you think of all this Cubic stuff, man? I mean, you think is it rest in peace for Random X? Are you giving up on Random X as some people are? Are you open to hybrid proof of stake? Do you think no, actually everything's working as intended? This is just a stress test.
Yeah.
What's your overall take?
It's an interesting time to be alive and being somewhat active in the Monero community. I'm not so sure really. Like the whole Cubic thing kind of like brought up my internal discussion about like proof of work versus proof of stake, etc. But it also solidified some points about Monero or Monero's design. Like for example, like I still think like the dynamic blocks with the tail emission is like has to be shown that it's somewhat of the better design than having like the 21 million hard cap that Bitcoin has. But like the whole discussion about like ASICs and ASIC resistance, I'm still like favoring the proof of work design in itself, and also I think the ASIC resistance is the better choice, but it's like I'm like struggling to really like find good arguments for it, or like I'm not so like 100% set on this. But that's where like bodies like take resonated very well with me, because I think or what even Arctic said, I think in the last MoneroTopia or Monero Talk show, that he thinks that a lot of like little improvements to proof of work will make it much better in the end, or like much more resilient, and not like there's like one big improvement we can do to like make it stronger, but it's more like those little things like bodies idea, for example, I think. Because like maybe to bring up my my little calculation again, what I mentioned earlier, like when you look like oftentimes in discussions with Bitcoiners, I get this like argument, oh, look at the hash rate, like Bitcoin has like such a huge hash rate. And I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's true. I mean, Bitcoin is nearing 1 zeta hash per second, I think. And like just for perspective or comparison to Monero, that's about 180 billion times larger than Monero's hash rate. Like
that's crazy.
But then like a person with a bit of technical knowledge, you look at the different like hashing algorithms and you realize, okay, you can't really like compare these one to one, because like a SHA 256 hash from Bitcoin is like worthless in the Monero space, and you could hash or like produce hashes with like CPUs for Bitcoin, but that's also useless because ASICs are so much more efficient in that space. So I like tried to like find a angle of comparison between these two that is better than that. And if you look at the like different CPUs or like the ASICs and how much hashes they produce, like I think Bitmain produced one quote unquote ASIC for Monero that was just a bunch of RISC-V CPUs in a bundle together, and it's what from the efficiency, like hashes per watt produced was roughly equal to like modern Ryzen CPUs from AMD. So it was just like another package basically. But if you like take this ASIC for Monero and compare it to like the ASICs for Bitcoin, you see that the typical ASIC for Bitcoin produces 1 billion times as much hashes. So they're like the 180 billion times larger hash rate for Bitcoin isn't as much bigger as you would think it is. Like if you break it down to the like how much ASICs do you need to achieve the Bitcoin hash rate, or how much ASICs quote unquote do you need to achieve the Monero network hash rate, is only like you only need like 200 times the amount of miners to get to the Bitcoin hash rate compared to the Monero hash rate. I don't know if that makes
in terms of units that are mining is what you're saying.
Exactly. If you like took only like those ASICs from Bitmain and tried to achieve like the Bitcoin network hash rate or the Monero network hash rate, because you can't really know like what ASICs are the Bitcoin miners really using, or what kind of CPUs are the Monero miners using. You can't really know this stuff. It's like, so it's just like if you take equal like hardware from a vendor and try to like build this networks with this hardware from this vendor, so you can like kind of like compare this to a certain degree. And then you see like the amount of watts you need to produce the amount of hash rate in Bitcoin is about 500 times larger than the amount of wattage you need, or the amount of electricity you need for the Monero network. But that basically scales with the ratio between the market caps. I mean, Bitcoin is speaking right now about 440 times as large as Monero, and you need 500 times as much wattage. So it's very comparable. And to buy like enough ASICs to produce the Bitcoin hash rate, you would need like 320 times more dollars compared to getting to the Monero hash rate. So it's also like roughly in the ballpark of the like the ratio between the two market caps. So I personally would say we can see that the like both proof of work systems work very equally, because the amount of yearly inflation for the networks is somewhat comparable. I mean, I think Bitcoin is about 8.3 and Monero is at 0.84% per year, and Bitcoin is at 0.83% per year, I think. So they are very, very close in like yearly inflation rate. And funnily enough, their networks also is like somewhat equally secured by miners compared to like their market cap. So if we
do you think Bitcoin is effectively as susceptible to this cubic attack we've seen as Monero is, given it was just an attack on pool mining, not right? They could pull in ASIC miners just as arguably just as easy as they could pull in CPU miners. Or is there a difference there because these are pieces of hardware that people invested in solely for the purpose of mining Bitcoin? do they then have less of an incentive to just follow the money because they're also invested in the network itself? That's kind of the argument that's being made, right? That's pro ASIC.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't really see that, to be honest. I mean, it's gonna be interesting because the Cubic community voted for Dogecoin, I think, as the next target.
Yes.
And
I saw they were mentioning Zcash too. I think it actually hurt the price a little bit at one point this week. And then it's
really?
bounced back up.
But
go ahead.
And I think like Dogecoin is also mined by ASICs, like Bitcoin, but other ASICs, I think. So it's going to be interesting if they can
it's script mining, right?
Yep, Dogecoin is mined
like
by Script,
Litecoin,
which is a different type of ASIC.
Okay. So it's going to be interesting because I don't think the same attack can be done with like Bitcoin or Doge or Litecoin that happened to Monero, because like the compute power in the Cubic network is, I think, like mostly CPUs and or maybe also GPUs for like the whole AI stuff, and you can only like leverage the CPU part against Monero.
Okay. Well, okay, so maybe that's why I think then they followed up with it's going to take us some months to like. So I think they're going to have to like tweak, I guess, their algorithm, or I don't know. Yeah, they're going to have to make it so their AI can be.
I don't think that works on a technical level.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, the whole point of an ASIC is like to have a hardware that is specifically like optimized to do a certain like function.
Right.
And a general CPU like can also do these hashes, but it's like way slower at doing, or like much more inefficient to do in doing this task. So I mean, they can mine Bitcoin also, or Dogecoin for that matter, but it's like much less efficient than just using the ASICs. So like this part doesn't work, but the economical path to like merge mine with Dogecoin and get the Dogecoin miners to join the Cubic pool, that then again works, but they can't like add their So it's going to be interesting if it really works. I mean, I'd say okay, Bitcoin for that matter. I mean, I haven't made the comparison with Dogecoin, but Bitcoin is like more secure in like the technical way of like having a higher market cap, and so the security budget is much bigger than Monero's. So that makes it harder to attack. But Bitcoin has like different avenues of attacking Bitcoin, and that's why I'm like against ASICs, because that leads to a more centralized miner, whatever, or like more centralized mining. And I don't know, it's gonna be interesting. But
we got a tip from Wanderer, tipped 5 cents. Missed the show beginning, but do you guys have any TDLR update on any research lab updates incoming from Monero? Still in discussion or anything agreed on? What about Fluffy Pony's proposal? We did talk about that at some point, but we could get MrWonderland's take on things. So yeah, what's it like overall, based on all the proposals you're seeing, short term, long term, what actions at this point do you think Monero should take, given the proposals that have put forth so far? If anything, maybe you think nothing, just continue full speed ahead.
To be honest, I'm like at the point where I'm like, I have like a somewhat good technical understanding of the whole stuff, but I am not as far down as I would like, and so I'm not really like sure what the perfect answer, or if there, or what the maybe best answer would be, because perfect answer probably isn't there or doesn't exist, like Arctic Mind said. So I'm like favoring like smaller improvements that don't really change the proof of work design of Monero in itself, because it kind of works as intended, but we can probably like optimize in that front a little bit, like with Body's proposal. And I think there are like a few others, like Tavador's, for example, like to just make it even harder for like big mining pools to, or like more like an incentivized design so that you get more people on P2 pool and smaller pools. So like I'm thinking in this direction, but keep the proof of work nature, because the, I don't know, like the 10 block log, for example, I'm not really like feeling this like downside, to be honest. Like, yes, it's nice if we could have like a instant finality and so on, but there are also like downsides to this design, as Body pointed out earlier, with the, if you have like a strict, I don't know, like after 10 blocks you lock the chain, then if you have like a big internet outage or something, or other vectors of attacks where you can like separate the network forever and it can't really like heal, or like the nodes can't really heal themselves. And that's what I like about his proposal, because it makes it like harder for selfish mining, and but also like keeping the system flexible, so in case of a bigger like internet outage or something, or network, what was it called, like a big network split could like automatically heal itself. So yeah, I'm not a big fan.
What do you
of
think
like
of Fluffy Pony's proposal, the detective mining pools?
It sounds interesting. I'm somewhat neutral, more like in the positive direction for this proposal. Is interesting. I need to think about this a little bit more, and like need to see some data about this, and some, because like Kayaba, or like Luke Parker, like also said, even is or asked if there isn't avenue for another attack, like to divert certain hash rate from honest miners to the like selfish miner this way. So yeah, I mean, there's like some stuff to figure out with this design, but I would count Fluffy Pony's proposal also to the like in the bag of little improvements to proof of work in general, to just harden or make proof of work more resistant. And but there's like another way of how we could improve the whole like situation, because like we can't really influence the price in itself. I mean, if the price of Monero did like a 10x in, I don't know, like the next year.
Yeah,
or
there's
something,
people out there like, see, we should have been pro number go up. I mean, like everybody want, I do agree. There was like, there was a meme out there, right? Like that we shouldn't care about price, and I'm glad that maybe this pushes that away, like pushes that under the carpet a little bit more, and people don't run with that one as much, because I do think the higher Monero's price, the more utility it has, the more security it has. Sure, we shouldn't be running around just like pumping the trying to pump the price, but we should all be excited about a growth in Monero's price.
And as I pointed out, the price is going up on average over the long term. The price is headed upwards.
Yeah, and I also think we really don't like only having like a huge like spike in price or something, like huge volatility is a negative in itself again, because you can also like attack the network through like bad PR and FUD, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, just like to push the price down, get some miners to exit, and then you have like another way, or like have it easier to attack the network again. So you want a steady like bottom up like price increase. And like, for example, what I noticed with like Havino or like Rito swap, if you try to like purchase Monero in the like during the hard dip down, you couldn't really like get Monero, or like that huge amount of Monero, to be honest, because
nobody wanted to sell it.
Exactly. Like, you you couldn't like really like buy the dip on Havino, and that's like kind of like the point, because I'm like, or why I like that we delist all the exchanges basically, and only are available on like, I don't know, Serai at some point, and then like Haveno or RitoSwap. So we get like a much more steady and less attackable price, because like at the point where like Serai exists and Havino and Serai both rely like on the price of Monero on their own data, and not so much on the centralized exchanges, they can't really like fuck with the Monero price that way anymore. And
I mean, my only thought there is too, you know, obviously it just cuts noobs off from Monero though, right? Like new people coming in. That's the only downside I see with that. Obviously, ideally, everybody's obtaining it through, you know, these new decentralized exchanges, and we make them pretty slick and kind of build them into wallets like Cake. But we're not. We're some time away from that.
Yeah, but I mean, with like Serai and an integration of Serai maybe into Cake Wallet, that would enable even noobs to get to Monero.
I agree with that.
I mean, if noobs just buy the like KYC crypto, I don't know, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, whatever you like, or Bitcoin, on the exchange, and then just swap it to Monero, then we're like fine as well. And I'm like seeing in my personal life and so on, more and more people like trying to get into Monero, and I help them, like show them the way how they get the Monero, or I like buy it for them. And I think this is like the way, like more and more people slowly get interested in this. And if all the like more technical people, the Monero people, help like their friends and I don't know, people all around them with this kind of stuff, I think we can also like onboard a lot of people. But we don't really like want the, I don't know, Bitcoin ETF guys or something. It's totally like worthless for the price. I mean, yes, the price pumps up, but I don't know, if like we get a major or like a somewhat bigger crash or like economy collapse, I think these are the first people to sell their Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, because they are not invested in the tech, or they don't understand the tech and don't want the tech. They just want the number to go up, and we don't want these people because they're gonna
they're not diamond hands. They're not diamond hands.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I mean, the usability of Monero needs to improve in all the systems. For example, Havino with a mobile version would be great to have, and I think it's not too far off. So
I'm seeing XMR Bazaar being used more for, Monero to cash and vice versa.
True.
People are starting to use it. I personally used it in Europe, in Portugal. It worked out nicely for myself. So yeah, there's ways, guys. The bridges exist. We just need to continue to improve them and get more people using them. But yeah, I am of the other side too, thinking like, would be nice to be able to tell people that I meet all the time. They're like, hey, Doug, so this Monero thing, how do I get some of it? If you're just like, like Coinbase account that you have, just go on there and grab some Monero. But I can't. I have to tell them the other way, and with that, the entire story as to why it's that way, which is nice because you're really truly onboarding a new Monero person, but it's a much harder sell. People are busy. People aren't as passionate about this stuff as we are. They're not as sensitive to it. They don't see a story about bank accounts wanting to ask more for KYC, and they don't freak out like we do. Like, they just see the world differently, unfortunately, which is a big problem. And we got to continue to educate them on it. But it's also nice and easy to if you could just be like, just go on Coinbase and grab some, and baby steps, right? And then you bring them down the rabbit hole that way. Now they have some. Now they're learning about it. Now they're realizing, wait a minute, when I use this one, nobody can see what I can do. Although when I use this one, they can't, So I think there is value in noobs being able to have very easy access to grabbing some Monero, even if it's not, without KYC using cash.
Yeah, I mean, I see the argument, but I'm also like concerned about like the noobs like getting easily into Monero. They can also easily get out of Monero, and if I can choose, I personally only like I would prefer people getting harder into Monero, but also harder out of Monero. So it like keeps the system like somewhat more stable.
Quantity versus quality, easy in, easy out. But if it's hard to get in, then they're getting in for a reason. They're getting in because they actually need it, and so they're less likely to leave. Or if they do leave, they're going to leave less than what they got in. So they bought 1 Monero and they might sell 0.1 or something like that, because they understand now the reason for its existence and why it was so hard to get it.
Yeah, you're getting higher quality users straight up. People that are in it for the right reasons, that want to use it, that want to go on XMR Bazaar, that want to, use Savino. They understand it, and they went out of their way to obtain it. Definitely agree with all those points.
Because otherwise you get James Wynn on frickin' whatever that thing is, 100x longing and getting liquidated and all that crap.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the problem is, part of the way this stuff works is you need to grow beyond a certain, you need that network effect. The power of this from cryptocurrency comes from a strong user base and adoption, right? So there's that aspect of it too that you can't forget. It's like yes, we're trying to build adoption in our own little way secretly behind the scenes. But we're also up against the clock, and we need to reach a certain size by a certain point in time, so that it won't be easy for any government to shut us down. So in that respect, I'm of the opinion that we got to do, bring in as many people as we can as soon as we can. It's also a way I look at it. So the more people that use Monero, truly more powerful it becomes. It becomes harder to turn off, becomes harder to shut down. If you have every average Joe is like, well, I bought some on Coinbase, even politically, it becomes difficult to then turn against this thing. So, I don't like to see the Monero community become insular about it and be like, oh, we don't need, fuck everybody else. We don't need them. We don't need the noobs. We don't need the people that we do. We do need them. Because the only way a project like this can succeed against those that we're trying to essentially topple is you need the power of the masses of the people using your technology.
But is it really the mass? I mean, we need a certain amount of people, yes. I mean, for example, if I look at COVID, it was in the end, it was I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 30% of people that went against the mainstream narrative. And I think those people are what we need to get into Monero, basically. But the other 70% or more, we really don't want them, because they don't understand. They will comply with the state, even if they bought some Monero and the state says no, Monero is bad, then they will sell it. I don't know. I don't see these people as very helpful or even beneficial to our cause.
Yeah, no, I would disagree with you there for all the reasons I was saying, but I hear you. I hear that point. But overall, I think Monero benefits more the more users we get into it, even if it's not the highest quality user. I think that just greatly strengthens the network. I think that's where Bitcoin has really excelled. I mean, look how embedded Bitcoin has become into the system. Now, you could say, okay, well, that's a bad thing, because by way of doing that, Bitcoin is no longer what it was meant to be, and I agree. But maybe this is what Bitcoin is providing, right? That's really what differentiates it from any other crypto, is that it's got its fangs into the system. It's been co-opted in a way, but now it's not going anywhere. It's completely embedded in the system, right? Those that were threatened by it, aren't really that threatened by it anymore. And so if that's what's going to keep it alive, Monero is a little trickier because it really stands to disrupt the system. But if it can get its claws in deep enough, then that too will not ever go away. And so the only way it gets its claws in deep enough is if enough people are using it. You know, we need billionaires using it. We need politicians using it. We need everybody feeling like, you know, out of greed, obtaining the benefits out of what Monero, you know, supplies, the utility that supplies, out of their own individual greed, out of a need for something that can do this. And then collectively it becomes unstoppable when enough percentage of society is using it, because it's just purely embedded.
Are you sure we haven't already hit that point? And the reason I ask is because the code's on Tor, the code's on different repositories, so you can always download the code. You can always run it. Unstoppable swaps between Bitcoin and between Bitcoin and Monero exist. I think between Ethereum and Monero exist. I think they're working on Bitcoin Cash to Monero. And there's decentralized exchanges such as ReToswap. You've got marketplaces such as yours with XMR Bazaar. So you've got a core group of users who absolutely are not going to give up on Monero no matter what the state says. And the only way to stop Monero, it would seem to me, would be to shut down the internet.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if we're there yet, but I don't think we should sit on our laurels, right? Like, yes, we're pretty strong, but we got to be rowing strong more than ever right now. Like, we're trying to get out past the waves, right? Once we get out past the breakers, we could paddle on in safety. I still think there's a couple of more big waves we gotta paddle through. Now is not the time to assume like, I feel like now more than ever, we need to be doubling down on all our efforts. Obviously, everybody mine, but everybody grow adoption. Everybody use it, keep spreading it. I like what people are doing on X, trying to onboard new people in different communities, different groups, different political persuasions. I think we need to be full speed on that. Obviously, we should have always been, but now it's like we got to turn it up now, because I feel like they are turning up the heat against us. So we could all agree.
From the comments, the like Anon Mon, that is like kind of like a straw man you're putting out there, because like we are not like Shortwave and me aren't against mass adoption, but it's like it's always a trade-off. And I would argue Monero like learned from the Bitcoin mistakes and did the whole design things much more clever, or like in a more optimized way. Like Bitcoin is always like the small blocks and stuff. This is like the optimum, and it isn't. And Monero has like the better design to like get the higher optimum between like using more hardware, but also like being able to scale further. And I think we want to reach like the same like sweet spot with like adoption. Like, don't be the absolute niche project that no one uses, but be big enough that you're like so like ingrained in certain processes, like the darknet market, for example. If like what like Zeno said with like his darknet market maximalism, like the average Joe just wants to buy some, I don't know, weed or something in the darknet market, and he uses Monero for that. So like we want those users, but we don't want the, I don't know, number go up, I'm buying the Monero ETF guys. That's but I'm beating a dead horse here. So
we have a tip from XMR, tipped 5 cents. What is your quick 60-second elevator pitch to a business as to why they should accept Monero and why they should care? That's a really good question, right? Because like the initial use cases isn't your small business, you know, your donut shop or something necessarily, right? It's people that need to use digital cash because they really have a need to essentially transact without surveillance, right? Maybe it's like they want to buy something controversial. Maybe it's they want to donate to a political campaign and not be identified. Like, these are the things where people really need to go out of their way for it. But then the next layer is people that see the utility in transacting with traditional cash. So my pitch to any business like this would be, would you like it if all your customers paid you in cash? And most businesses, I think, would be like, yeah, that'd be great, but you know what? Nobody does that anymore. Everybody wants to use credit cards. And that's when you start to explain, yeah, they're trying to get rid of cash, but there's this new thing that replaces cash. It acts just like cash. It's not like a credit card. There's no transaction fees taken. There's no Visa company involved. There's no banks involved. People can come into this store and they could buy whatever it is you're selling with untraceable digital cash. And here's how they do it. It's called Monero. I'll send you some. I mean, I think people would understand and see the value in a replacement for cash, and do realize that cash is being eliminated, and would like to have cash in theory. They just think that it's been essentially has been eliminated and there's no coming back. They don't realize that you can use something. It's just as easy to use as credit card, just as easy to use as PayPal, as Venmo, but it's actually like cash. And nobody can see, when your customers are sending you money, how much they're sending. Yes, obviously you got to go pay your taxes, but it's just like if you were receiving cash in your business. And I think a lot of businesses see value in that.
Oh, sorry. I think one of the big arguments for Monero, or for crypto in general, for businesses, is to just basically double their profit margin in not having the credit card fees.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's not even just credit card fees, right? There's value in cash itself, right? It goes beyond, deeper than the fees saved.
I think the thing is the unconfiscatability. So, the settlement time. With Monero, it's fully settled in 20 minutes. Guaranteed, it cannot be pulled away from you. Unlike a credit card or unlike whatever. The only other thing that does that is cash. And cash is going away.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. The instant settlement, the non-reversibility of the transactions, and the basically non-existent fees are, I think, like
and not having your other means being directly connected to the IRS, where it's auto-reported how much money a business is making when they're, if they're using whatever it is, PayPal, Venmo. I mean, all these things basically if they don't already have to, will be having to report. Right. And so I'm not saying don't pay your taxes, but I think there's a lot of small businesses that remember the time when you used to be able to just run a business with cash and then you pay your taxes. Right. And I think a lot of people appreciate that and understand that gives them independence. And so, there's value there too, however you want to explain it or phrase it, but there's certainly value there too. And there's really nothing that can do that right now other than cryptocurrency, Monero, right? And of the cryptocurrencies, only Monero. So I think that's how you sell people on that. And it's super cheap to send, super cheap to receive. And it's more secure. It's more secure than traditional cash. You don't have to worry about storing your cash somewhere. You get into explaining how this thing can function with view keys and whatnot. So the people, working in the business will never have access to the funds. It's but you're receiving cash digitally and it's going into a piggy bank. Nobody can touch. They can't come in here and tell you to open up the cash register and take all your cash. There's a lot of advantages. I mean, it really does make sense from a usability standpoint for businesses to start using Monero. It's just going to take time for people to realize it.
By the way, is Body here? Because I would have loved his perspective, because he said earlier that he really looked into the into more proposals like his, and I really like the list Luke Parker gave on GitHub, the big with the finality layer and so on, were interesting. But if there are lots of smaller proposals, that would be interesting to hear about. But if he's not here, then never mind.
No, I'm here. Yeah, there's actually, hell, maybe it'd even be worthwhile just to post on Twitter. Rucknium posted like 10 different articles of like, hey, here's my reading list, and there's a lot. So Ethereum, when they were proof of work, invented this idea called uncle blocks. So, man, you know what? Let me take a step back from there. There's so much stuff, right? Like I was saying earlier, there's so many different proposals that could be done. A lot of them are sort of just slightly different variations on each other, and it's hard, like from a pure like statistical modeling mathematical standpoint, it gets a little bit difficult to say which one is necessarily better, which one is worse, especially since we have to start thinking about how these proposals could affect network healing, right? So if your node like if there's a network split, for example, because of a global internet outage in Bitcoin, the moment that you reconnect, you just say, hey, who's got the heavier chain? Okay, and you immediately, there's an immediate heal time there. Whereas if we were to do something like a rolling lock, then there is, beyond a certain level, there is zero heal time. And then for like kind of the proposal that I made with trying to weight blocks differently, you have some non-zero heal time when the network reconnects. So like all these different like second order effects have to be considered. And there's like right now, like there's kind of this big divergence of thinking like, okay, we have all these proposals, all these things on the table we could do. Let's start trying to, chip away at this big block. Let's everyone start reading these papers. Everyone start, trying to see what's on the table. So that list that's on GitHub that's been floating around that Luke Parker made, that's like, that's not even the, that's just like a part of the things that are being considered. And I think I had a couple breakthroughs recently in my own thinking, ways to frame the problem that will help us to organize our thinking on how to approach which solution is going to ultimately be our best option. And the first one, I'll just give it to you in the order that it came. The first one is that time is an independent variable and an externally verifiable unit that you can include informationally into making decisions. And a lot of these proposals effectively are just some version of time, right? Helping us to figure out how do we order the transactions? How do we order the blocks? Which chain do we consider more important, right? So when I talked about time weighting the blocks, so then the question comes up, well, having a Byzantine fault tolerant view of time is very difficult. So what other kinds of time can we use? There's a time version that's called monotonic, and it just means that you only go forward. You're just counting the seconds from like the moment that an event happened. Like it doesn't matter if you're UTC synchronized or in network time protocol, NTP, probably some of you all know what NTP is. It doesn't matter if you're necessarily perfectly synchronized with everyone else, so long as you're counting the seconds accurately since you observed an event. So there's kind of that's on the table. And another like really breakthrough thing, and I'm not totally confident on it, but I think that proof of stake, a lot has been made of the stake. Like, oh, everyone's staking now, and the game theory and the economic incentives. And, right now, I'm not sure that we should be trying to design the thing on the basis of economic incentives. Our biggest attack vector is the irrational actor, the one that doesn't care about the economics, that is willing to attack the chain and throw millions of dollars if they need to attack it. So I think that's what we have to design to. So, but when it comes to proof of stake, I think it's actually the case that because proof of stake directly integrates the independent time variable into how they make decisions, that provides the informational, from an information theory standpoint, that gives them the informational resolution that they need to have much greater tolerance in some ways to these kinds of reorgs that we see. And a lot of people make it a big deal about the stake, and they're like, well, the staking and the mechanisms and the slashing and the counter incentives and all this other stuff. But honestly, I think that proof of stake is largely just time with extra steps. And so and then yesterday, is it a breakthrough? I don't know. But in my own thinking, I feel like there's something here. And I actually spent the entire day trying to investigate this. We have an information theory problem. And potentially, an entropy problem as well. Like you can model this as information entropy potentially. And so what we might be able to do is, if we can model the chain and model the different propositions as entropy problems and or information theory problems, we might be able to gain better resolution on when a proposition is sort of necessary complexity that integrates information that's available that we're not currently using. For example, orphan blocks is a piece of information that we don't integrate into decision making, and maybe there's something there for us to be able to use that. So the term, when we talked about uncle blocks, so instead of being orphans, you adopt them into the chain, and then you weight the chain. You give uncles weighting into the chain, and you'll hear from the maximalists, the Bitcoin maximalists. They'll be like, well, the blockchain trilemma, and there's only trade-offs, and you can't do any better than Nakamoto consensus, pure Nakamoto consensus, and that's, I think, false.
Yes.
And it's an information theory problem. But if we can define it as an information theory problem and validate that, that's a really good tool set for us to start chopping branches that are like sort of overly complex gymnastics that really are just doing something much more simple. And then sort of like maybe focus in on the places that might give us more bang for our buck, or that are solidly within the information theory spectrum, things that we should be able to figure out how to leverage. Does that mean we can like totally fix the problem? Probably not, but I think there's a lot to be gained there. But as you can tell, like that's pretty deep, right? Like that goes really deep, and very little, as far as I can tell, there's not a whole lot of like theoretical academic work that merges information theory and entropy considerations into blockchains. So there's probably something there. I'm still like at the very early conceptual stages of thinking about that, and it's definitely not my specialty. Like I don't have a master's or a PhD in mathematics or information theory, so it's like I've got a learning curve there to overcome.